I've always wanted to try an African man since they had good genetics. The next day, the papers arrived. You guys remember the saying, curiosity killed the cat?
Yeah.
That's right. When the next version of that saying comes along or you come across it, I want you to remember me. You don't understand what I'm saying, okay? Let me try again. I'm still the one with the curiosity, but it didn't actually kill me. It was divorce papers that did it. I'm sitting here in a motel with my bags, typing this, and I still can't understand what happened or how it even got to this point. I shouldn't have been so curious about it, but I just couldn't help myself, and now I'm back to where I started, or maybe even worse than when I started. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the story for you. You know, as bad as it is, I can't help but laugh at how dumb I was. I know you might think that my situation isn't so serious if I know it sounds ridiculous, but I promise you it is. I'm only laughing because I've run out of tears to shed. I was really stupid to think that it would end well. Now I'd like you to get comfortable, get under those covers, turn off those lights. You can even make some popcorn or some pop. I'll tell you a story about curiosity killing the cat. It's a bit long, but stick with me. My name is Jod Evans. I'm 45 years old. I'm from Utah, and I lost my mom when I was 3. My dad and I have been together ever since. I wouldn't say I was a troublesome child, but I was different growing up without a mom. My dad did his best to raise me to be responsible and decent, even though he was sometimes clueless. I was an average student in middle school, but I got into the University of Utah to study psychology. I'm not proud to say this, but I thought I could use psychology to get out of my predicament. It just made things a whole lot worse. While I was in school, I was a bookworm and rarely hung out with friends, so I never got to experiment or try new things. Sometimes, not trying new things can actually be a good thing. There's no rule that says you must try everything. My friends tried everything within their power to get me to leave my dorm room and go clubbing with them every other night, but I wasn't one to give in to peer pressure. It's funny because it's peer pressure that got me into this mess in the first place. I stayed in school and avoided parties until I graduated, but my friends never gave up on me. For the first 2 years after I graduated, I lived with a friend of mine and worked as a therapist. That's where I met my husband. Before you think that I broke the rule that stated that I wasn't allowed to date my clients, Bill, my husband, well, not for long anyway, was not a client. His friend had come to make an appointment with me, and that's where Cupid decided to shoot his arrows. I didn't pay much attention to Bill at first because I always put my work first. But when a guy is always sending flowers, gifts, and chocolate to your office, you start to notice. If I'd ignored Bill and all his advances, none of this would have happened. I'd still be single and probably have a house full of cats, but at least I wouldn't have any consequences. I'd probably be somewhere with my friends, talking and laughing about all this. But that's not what happened. Even my so-called I haven't seen any of my friends lately. It's actually quite funny. I mean, after leading me so close to the fire that I got burnt, they just abandoned me. Great, just great. But anyway, back to my ridiculous tale. So, like I said, it would have been better for me if I stayed away from Devin and any other guy, but I didn't. Devin had this charm, I don't know how to explain it. I just couldn't resist him. Before I knew it, Devin and I were out on a date, laughing our socks off. He was hilarious and really knew how to keep a conversation going. We went to different spots for our dates, and you know what's funny? We didn't go to the usual fancy restaurants.
Oh no.
We went on picnics and to the amusement park. Devin and I went to all kinds of places on our first date. We went to McDonald's, we went hunting, we went house hunting. Devin wasn't weird or cheap, but I had told him that I never went to these places when I was growing up. It took me a while to realize that he was letting me relive that part of my childhood that was missing. That act alone made me fall harder and deeper in love with him. He once asked me if I had written a bucket list. I should have either said no or been honest with him and given him both, but I made the second worst mistake of my life and gave him the bucket list I wrote in high school. You might ask yourself why it is such a bad thing. I had 2 bucket lists, one I made in high school and one I made in college. I gave him the one I wrote in high school, which had some innocent wishes and dreams. Wishes and dreams, but the other one had more mature content. If I had discarded the other one, I would have been in a different situation. That's enough of my rambling. Let me continue with my experience, which was bittersweet. After I gave Devin that list, he made it his mission to make sure that all my boxes were ticked. I loved him for doing that for me. We dated for 6 months before he popped the question. We got engaged after a year of dating. He had some business to take care of, so we waited another year before we actually got married. He went all out on our wedding day, and I have to say, it was the wedding of my dreams. Honestly, I thought we'd go broke after the wedding. He invited a whole bunch of people, including. I had a celebrity perform at my wedding, and let me tell you, the vows he wrote were something else. I cried so much that day that my makeup artist was tired of fixing my makeup. It was a beautiful day and night, if you know what I mean. I still get flashbacks of that night, and I always thought nothing could top it, but I was wrong. I was very wrong. I still don't know what to make of all this because I didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to do it, but then there was peer pressure and curiosity. It was a bit overwhelming, to be honest. It was a great experience, but I took my look for granted. A few weeks later, I was telling a bunch of people my story. Oh well, back to the story. After we got married, we took some time off from work to enjoy our honeymoon. When I say the week, I really mean it. Devin worked in construction and also traded on the side, so money was never really a problem. He had a 7-to-5 job. Devin was always there for me, even when I needed him most. Even when he'd come back and I was tired, he'd ask me about my day and try to make me laugh before going to bed. Devin and I had agreed to wait 2 years before trying for a baby. We wanted to reach a certain level at work so that our jobs and responsibilities to our baby wouldn't be affected. The first year flew by quickly. By then, Devin got promoted to a better job, while I got the top position at the hospital where I worked. It was the best job in my profession, at least. Devin and I had a thing we did every Friday to keep our marriage exciting. We'd dress up, drive to a bar or restaurant, and act like we were meeting each other for the first time. I'd take a cab to our chosen spot, and he'd arrive a few minutes later. Devin's car was always fun and somehow made everything better. We always did this, and today was going to be no exception. After I closed work, I got a text from Devin telling me where and when we would meet. I got home, put on an LBD, let my hair fall to my shoulders, and then applied light makeup before heading out. Now, ladies, this was when I had actually signed my death certificate, but I had no way of knowing that until everything blew up in my face. Even joking, what should have been a beautiful and romantic night ended up being something much more than that. When I got to the bar, I ordered a martini and waited for Devin to show up. 15 minutes go by and I get a text from him saying he's stuck in traffic, but that he'd be with me soon. While looking at my phone, I didn't notice that someone had taken the stool next to mine and was now staring at me. When I finally placed my phone on the table, I saw someone smiling at me. It's important to note. The bar was pretty dark, and the guy was sitting down, so I couldn't see his features right away. But I would be able to see him soon. Hi, my name is Lion. What's a beautiful girl like you doing alone in a place like this, he said, partly because of the loud music. I'm not a rude person, so I just told him that I wanted to cool off. He said he'd talk to anyone while I was there. He was about to say something, but he got a call and excused himself. He gave me his business card and asked me to get in touch with him. I collected it, which I realized was a mistake, and told him I would after he left. I kept the card in my purse, which I also realized was a mistake, and said I would tell Devin about it, knowing that he would make jokes about it. Devin finally arrived, and we had our little role play. So I went back home, and you get the idea. I'd forgotten to tell Devin about Lion, and I'd even forgotten that I still had his card. I didn't know that meeting Lion would be the end of me. Not getting his card would have been getting a pen to sign it and putting it in my bag. If only I'd known then what I know now, I would have torn that card up or not even accepted it in the first place. 2 weeks had gone by since I met Lion and I'd completely forgotten about him. But the universe had other plans for me, and they weren't very nice. Things were going well, but as we'd hoped, Devin was now working overtime. To be honest, it was starting to affect our lives. Devin, who was once a ray of sunshine, suddenly became this cold and gloomy person. How do I make you understand me better? Well, picture this: the orange cat got married to the black cat. Just to let you know, I'm the black cat and Devin is the orange cat, but suddenly the orange cat turns into an even darker black cat. Devin suddenly became a shadow of his former self and I began to get worried. Now, to be fair, everyone has that one period in their lives when it's as though nothing is going their way, and it starts. Devin was going through that too, and I could see that, but whenever I brought it up, he changed the topic or just pretended not to hear me. At first, I didn't let it get to me, but then I noticed that my marriage was at risk of falling apart before it even started, which made me feel both terrified and I was angry and terrified that I was about to lose my home. I was also angry that Devin didn't want to tell me what was going on. I tried to get through to him, but it didn't work. So I decided to let him be and just focus on my work. I started taking extra shifts and wouldn't return until late in the evening. Devin would be in the sitting room or sometimes sleeping in the bedroom. We both knew how to cook, so sometimes he would prepare a meal and leave some for me, or I would do the cooking when I got home. We barely talked for more than 30 minutes when we could, and none of us tried to fix it. I was getting pretty fed up, so I prayed for something, anything, to help me keep my sanity. I know that saying, be careful what you wish for, but sometimes, when you start understanding the meaning of certain things, it's already too late. I really wish I could go back to that warm afternoon and change the things I said and did. Sadly, I can't go back to that day. I'll always remember the day I let a lion into my petting zoo. I was down to my last patient of the day. To be honest, I was exhausted, but I needed to finish everything today because I had a tight schedule the next day. I really can't afford to fix anything, so I asked my assistant to. When my door opened, I was hit by a smell that wasn't bad at all. It was a combination of lavender, roses, and lilac, which made me feel peaceful and light. It calmed me down, actually. I heard my door close and looked up to greet my client when I see a familiar face. I now know that he is fine, but now that I'm sitting opposite him, I can tell you that he is fine. He's Nigerian, to be precise. I've always heard stories about African men knowing how to treat their ladies. I must have zoned out for a while. I must have zoned out for a second because it took Femi touching me to bring me back to reality. Are you okay? You zoned out for a second there. Yes, I am. So, what do you need help with? I realized that he must have been in my office because he wanted help with something. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I have. He said that I needed to see a psychologist about it and that you were the best around here. He didn't break eye contact, and it felt like he was undressing me with his eyes. To be honest, I didn't mind. I asked him to be more specific about what he told me. I was so surprised I almost dropped my pen. I can't tell you what it is because he is, or rather was, my patient. I'm not allowed to discuss such issues with a third party, but I can tell you this: his problem didn't really sound like a problem to me. It sounded like a blessing. FEI became a regular face at my office after that. That day, he still didn't know that I was married, which was my fault. I stopped wearing my ring to work because I saw that my male clients were able to open up more to me if they thought I was single. I know it's a bit silly, but it worked. His problem wasn't really complicated, and if I'm being honest, I enjoyed his company. To be honest, I enjoyed his company each time he came while things were going well in the office. However, my relationship with Devin kept getting worse with each passing day. We barely spoke to each other these days, and the crazy thing is that we weren't having any issues. It just looked like we'd drifted apart, and it felt like we were just strangers who were obliged to share a house. Now I know what you're thinking. You might be asking why I didn't try to get through to my husband, why I let things get so bad between us. To be honest, I don't know why. Remember, I told you. You know about the whole black cat and orange cat thing, right? Well, I just couldn't bring myself to talk to him. I know that's not an excuse, but that's all I can say. I don't know if FEI figured out I was married or if I had said something that gave away my marital status, but he knew. Unlike most men, that only made him come closer. We got pretty close, but he was never inappropriate or flirty in any way. I should have realized that all he did was just an act. After some time, Fi and I became close friends, and he became the best friend I always wanted. He was always there when I needed someone to talk to or wanted to vent my frustration. He was always there for me, offering support and understanding. He encouraged me to be patient with my husband and avoid arguments with Devin. Despite the challenges in my relationship with Devin, things weren't getting any worse. Having Femi in my life felt like having a dealer who he was always there for me when I needed him, and the fact that he never tried to hit on me or encourage me to cheat on my husband made me even more eager to spend time with him. I studied psychology and thought I knew how to spot mind games, but when it came to Femi, I was the one being played. When I met Femi, I was the one being played, but I didn't realize it until it was too late. I still can't believe I was so naive and didn't see the signs early enough. How could I have let myself believe everything he said and did? I guess I was just too trusting. Let's get back to the story. Fei had been my close friend for 3 months before he finally asked me out for lunch. I didn't think anything was wrong, so I accepted his offer. We went to the park and set up a small picnic blanket where we ate the finger sandwiches he had made. It was really fun being with him. And I actually forgot about Devin and my marriage for some time. You can imagine how heartbroken I was when it was time to go home. I know I'm married, but my marriage was really affecting me, and here was a guy who tried his best to make me smile. After our first lunch date, we made it a tradition to have lunch together almost every day for the next 3 weeks. It was just a harmless lunch date, so you can imagine what my reply was when he asked me out to dinner. I know I should have refused and brought up the I am a married woman, but I wanted to laugh, smile and feel giddy inside again. That's something Devin had stopped doing for me, so I agreed to go on a dinner date with him. Besides, Devin had traveled for a conference, so I didn't have to lie about where I was going. Fei took me to a restaurant where we had an African meal and I tried some of his favorite dishes. We had Nigerian jollof rice with a bottle of red wine, and for dessert he ordered some dried meat that was sprinkled with pepper. I think he called it soya, but I can't remember. It was hard but yummy with so much seasoning. After the meal, he took me to get ice cream, and I felt like a high school girl on her first date. It was really nice to experience all that with Femi. I wish I had that experience with my husband. I miss Devin. I don't want to stop spending time with Femi and go back to my boring marriage. Heck, no. I wasn't ready to give all that up. I was finally having the time of my life and I wasn't about to give that up. After that night, my relationship with Fei changed for the better. He was no longer just one of my patients, he was like my work husband, even though he didn't work. In my office, he was friendly with other hospital staff and even the kids loved him. I didn't know at the time that it was all a lie and that I was wrong to believe that femininity was all I wanted in a man. As the days went by, I noticed that I was slowly getting attached to him sexually. I would have dreams about being in his arms or tasting his lips. I found myself thinking about being in his arms or tasting his lips. I don't know how to explain it, but I was infatuated with him. I didn't plan to act on my thoughts because I was still married to Devin and still kind of loved him. I didn't know if he felt the same way towards me. I felt drawn to him, but I still don't know how or why. I just knew that I was getting more and more attracted to him with each passing day. One day he came into the office smiling and holding a piece of paper. I'd just seen my last patient for the day and I was exhausted. "Look what I found," he said, waving the piece of paper around. I asked without looking at him. "Well, I found something that might interest you," he said. I finally looked at him and the pieces of paper in his hands. My heart stopped. Fei was holding my college bucket list. It was the same bucket list that I didn't give Devin. It was the same one that caused all that happened in my life. I know I shouldn't blame a piece of paper for my mistakes and poor life choices, but I do. I grabbed the paper from Femi's hand, but I was too late. He'd already seen what I'd written. The fact that I'd ripped it up didn't change anything. Please don't take what I wrote seriously. I was in school and bored. I didn't know what I was writing at the time. I rambled on while Femi just stood there looking at me. He didn't say anything until I'd finished talking. When I'd finally finished, he got up and patted my head while smiling. He said it wasn't stupid or silly. Okay, here's the deal, I won't bring it up again. He said, I'll let you choose which box to tick. This should have been a warning sign that Femi had some dark and sinister plans for me, but I didn't think like that at the time. I let him use his good boy persona to deceive me, and that's why I made the decision. I took the worst decision I'd ever made. I told her it was up to her, but I should have thought more about it. It's worth noting that I always told my girlfriends about my relationship with Fi, and they always encouraged me to enjoy it while it lasted. I agreed, but he said he would be the one to choose which box to tick and when to tick it. I agreed, but I had no idea what was about to happen. I had no idea how hard it would be or how much damage it would cause. The rest of the day went on. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful, and I soon forgot all about it that night when I got home. Devin was in the room, sitting on the bed and looking down at his phone without saying a word. I went into the bedroom and said, "Hey," but he never said a word. To be honest, I didn't even feel hurt or anything after that. I took my shoes off and got into bed when Devin spoke. He asked quietly, "Did you send money to my parents this month?"
Yeah.
I did, I replied, looking at him. He shook his head to indicate that there were no problems. Then he got up and left the room. I didn't know whether I should stop him or just ignore him and go to sleep. I chose the latter, and we were soon past me in the bedroom, him on the couch. You know what that's like. But if I'm being honest with you guys, I was already getting tired of my marriage to Devin. I really was getting tired, but I couldn't leave not yet. At least not until my marriage to Devin wasn't approved by his parents, but it wasn't because of me. It was because Devin refused to get married the same way his parents and grandparents did. If he had left, it would have just proved them right, and the fact that we hadn't tried getting pregnant would have just given them ammunition. I would rather die than give them that pleasure of hurting Devin the next day. I had left the house angry because Devin and I got into a fight about having kids. I wanted to have them, but he kept saying it wasn't time yet. We've been married for 3 years now. I left the house in a bad mood and went to the office, where I found a colleague who seemed confused. "What's wrong?" he asked, licking a lollipop. "Nothing," I replied, sitting down at my desk and taking some aspirin from my drawer. I was in a bad mood all day and I noticed, so when my lunch break came, he told me to leave early and follow him. I asked why, but he didn't say. He repeated those words to me, and I agreed to do it after we left the office. We drove to a 7-Eleven. And he told me to wait in the car while he went inside. After a while, he came outside with some bags and put them in the boot of his car before getting in the driver's seat. I asked him what he'd bought, but he didn't answer. He just smiled and started the car before driving off from the 7-Eleven. I couldn't put my finger on what FEI was planning, but before I could ask him one more time, he drove into a hotel and parked the car. He turned to face me and looked me dead in the eye. "It's time you take a break," he said. I couldn't think of a response or an objection, so I just smiled and followed him out. We went into the hotel, and I noticed that he was quite popular with the staff, which should have been my first clue, but I was just trying to relax. Once we got our room key, we walked up to our room, and he said he wanted to take a quick shower. I told him I was going to do the same. Guys, I have to be honest with you. When we first got here, I didn't have any plan or ulterior motive. I simply texted Devin that I wouldn't be coming home that day because I needed to cool off. Luckily, it was a weekend, so I didn't have to worry about him being upset. I was just looking to relax. I planned to spend the evening watching movies and hanging out with Femi. However, my thoughts took a different turn, and I ended up spending the night with FEI. When he emerged from the bathroom wearing nothing but a towel, I was so surprised that I choked on my water. I had never expected him to be so well built. I was expecting to see such a great physique in a V-line, like in Greek god, but as an African, his skin literally glowed, and I swear I wanted to lick it. I know it sounds a bit strange, but he was really fit. When he came out, he asked me to go and shower, saying that the water was good and that it would really help me calm down. I got up and was on my way to the restroom when I tripped on my own shoes. I know I'm clumsy, but I don't know why I grabbed Faye's towel. I guess I thought it would hold me. I took it with me, and when I looked up, I was speechless. I had no idea that part of the human body could be so. It was a big one, but not like huge. I mean, it was fat, right? You know what I mean? Just looking at it, you can tell how it would feel inside you. I don't know how long I was down there, but I got to my senses when he cleared his throat and asked for his towel. I was embarrassed, so I slowly got up. I got up and went to the bathroom, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I really couldn't stop. I just wanted to feel it inside me. I wanted him to just take me there and then, but how could I do that? I was married. Besides, I don't think I can even bring it to him. So I just decided to let it go.
Yeah.
That was it. When I got out of the bathroom, I was now in a bathrobe and talking to someone on his laptop, but I couldn't see the person. This is where I made the biggest mistake of my entire life. I completely ignored whoever was on that laptop and literally jumped on FEI. I ignored that little voice in my head telling me to stop. I wanted this, and I went for it. When he was finally inside me, he let out a soft, low growl. I'm not joking. It was at this moment that he held me tightly and showed me what it meant to be with an African man. We went on like this for a while. It felt like it went on forever until he finally came and collapsed on his side of the bed. It was more than I expected, and even though I felt guilty, it wasn't because of my marriage. It was because I couldn't do it again. We left the next day, and I could tell that FEI didn't want to talk to me for a while, and I actually didn't either. I guess you could say it was Devon's fault. We didn't expect what happened to happen, but it did. When I got home that day, I thought Devon would still be his usual moody self, but he was different. He was his old self again, the Devon I fell in love with. He had that adorable smile on his face that I remember so well. When I saw him in the kitchen, he rushed towards me and gave me a big hug. I could tell he was upset, but I didn't ask what was wrong. He held my hand and got on his knees before saying, "Jody, the love of my life, the one who brightens my heart, the woman of my dreams. I know I haven't been the best husband to you recently. I'm sorry, I was just going through a lot at work and I kept my problems to myself until I felt like I was at my worst. I know it would be hard to forgive, but I hope you can. I know I've caused you pain, but I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making things right." He stopped to wipe a tear from his eye, but I didn't even let him say more. I pulled him up and hugged him tight. I didn't even realize how much I loved and missed him until that very moment. I felt like I couldn't let him go. I said, "It's all right, I forgive you and I've really missed you." I cried before breaking down in his arms. We slept together the next day, crying tears of joy, reconciliation, and restoration. You might be asking, "Jod, why didn't you tell Devon about Femi?" It's important to be honest with him. It would surely strengthen the marriage. I know. But I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him because I didn't think it would help. I'd already stopped talking to Femi. Devon was back to his normal self, and although being with him was great, I wasn't about to risk my marriage. 2 weeks later, I came home to find the house empty. I figured Devon was working late, so I decided to freshen up and get dinner started. I walked into our room and I saw some mail on our bed, so I decided to check it out after my shower. After my shower, I decided to go through the mail and I saw one that had my name on it. I was curious about what the letter held, so I tore it open. The contents made my blood run cold. I can't even bear to go through it again, but I'll tell you what was in it. He wrote, "Dear Jody, by the time you read this letter I should have been long gone. Joe, I truly loved you. I was ready to do anything to make you happy. I know I grew distant, but I soon realized my mistake and came back to you. But I guess I was too late. Jody, you stood there that night, listened to my apology and didn't think it was right to tell me about your adventures with my brother. I'm speechless because I never expected you to sleep with my stepbrother. Are you confused? I'm talking about him. Yes, FEI. Jody, I thought you should know that I'm related to Faye, but you never met him because he was in Aruba with his family when you met at the club. He told me about it, and I expected you to tell me, but when you didn't, I figured you'd forgotten about him. Then he came to your office, and your friendship began. I asked him to come to you because I knew he'd get there safely. I was waiting for you to tell me about him, but you didn't. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt until you broke my trust and even insulted me. My brother has a hard time controlling his urges, especially when the woman takes him by surprise, but you still did that. How do I know I was on call with him that night? I gotta get a pendant for you and showed FAI when I came back what I guess I met my wife on top of my brother, who was clearly having the time of his life. But it's all right, so here's how it's going to be from now on. I sent a copy of your sex tape to both our families and your employers, and I also uploaded it for the world to see how you truly are. Then I hope you know that FEI has chlamydia, and now you have it as well. I'm actually laughing as I write this because I clearly dodged a bullet. I've attached the divorce papers and signed them on my side. I expect to get them back in the next 2 days. Wishing you all the best, Devin. They say once you go black, you can never go back. It's true. I tried black and now I can't go back. Not to Devin, not to Femi, not to my work, not even to my family. Thanks for reading, guys. I'm off to sign my divorce papers.